I'm a huge fan of the Yakuza series, since I played the original back on the PlayStation 2, and even with Sega being a little bit rocky with the releases for the last few years, I still am willing to support the franchise no matter what. And now we actually have Yakuza 0 here in North America. But does this game end up bringing honor to the franchise, or is this one part of the story that just didn't need to be told? Yakuza 0 was originally released in March of 2015 in Japan, but finally now has made it over to North America in 2017. It's a little bit different from the previous entry, going from 5 playable characters down to 2, but it still does exactly what the Yakuza games are known for. A great story, fun beat-em-up action that has some in-depth combos and lots of violence, as well as plenty of minigames and other activities throughout the open world of Japan that you get to explore. The 2 playable characters in the game are Kiryu, the main series protagonist, as well as Majima, one of the many fan favorites. Throughout the course of the game's main story, you'll be switching between the 2 main characters in about 2 chapter intervals. Thankfully, they always give you a little bit of a recap at the beginning of the next chapter where you switch characters again, so you're never going to be losing your place or forgetting what was happening as far as the main story was concerned. The coolest aspect, though, about Yakuza 0 is the fact that it's a prequel set in the late 1980s. So not only are you getting that culture of 1980s Japan, which is something that was really fun to experience, you also get the fact that you're getting some references and backstory and questions answered as far as some of the history of the characters of the series. While I don't want to go into too heavy spoiler territories by any means, I will say that the plot is as well done as ever when it comes to these series. If you really like the Yakuza games for their story, this one is really well done, and there is an absolute ton of cutscenes and dialogue and other story elements throughout. If you're someone who likes to get right back into the action, be prepared. There are a lot of cutscenes that are going to break up a lot of the core gameplay throughout you playing the main story. With that said, though, the main plot is all about, well, a plot of land, with the families kind of competing and trying to take control of it. Kiryu is blamed for a murder early on. Majima is trying to prove to his family that he's worthwhile after some stuff had ended up happening. Basically, he ends up deciding not to do a hit that he's ordered to do, and then gets thrust into this whole thing about this plot of land, real estate's involved, and of course the big rivalry between the different families. With the focus only on the 2 main characters, we also have a focus only on 2 areas of Japan that we end up getting to kind of explore and enjoy the day and nightlife of each. This may be a little bit of a down note for some people, but overall I think they did a good job with enough stuff going on in both of these areas that I definitely never got bored when it came to the nightlife and just general exploration of walking around the cities. If you're unfamiliar with the core gameplay of Yakuza, it's a 3D beat-em-up, and a really fun one at that. You'll be facing off against 1 to 20 different opponents all at once, and you'll have to, of course, block and counter, dodge out of the way of enemies, as well as just pound the attack buttons, strong and weak moves, use your heat moves, which allow you to kind of charge up in order to unleash some really powerful maneuvers against your opponents, and all, of course, while trying to survive and then move on to the next fight in that particular scene. Like the previous Yakuza games, you're able to level up your skill tree, but now what you're doing is leveling up each style of fighting. That's the coolest thing that's been added to Yakuza 0, is that since we only have 2 playable characters, we end up having multiple fighting styles for each of them, and they're different between the 2 main characters. You unlock a few as you're going through, and then you can even unlock one once you master everything with each of the characters. You can go from like a baseball bat weapon style with Majima over to a breakdancing style, or if you're playing as Kiryu, you got like his normal kind of fighting style, and then switching over to like a more wrestling-based one that I really ended up loving using throughout the course of most of my gameplay. You get to level up each of these as well, so you'll be able to get stats by spending your money in order to get more health in each fighting style, as well as more damage and new moves as you're going through the skill tree. Outside the game's main story, though, the Yakuza games are really known for a lot of side stuff to get involved with. There's a ton of sub-stories, basically side missions, that you'll be able to complete as each of the characters. Going around the town, you'll end up running into people that are in certain situations, like you may have to get an item, or talk to them, or beat somebody up, or whatever it may be, and sometimes you'll have choices throughout these sub-missions which allow you to either have a more successful conclusion or a less successful one, and basically it just affects what item you end up getting as a reward for completing the sub-mission. And there's a ton for both characters to complete. And just like with previous games, there is a lot of mini-games and other stuff to get into. Kiryu and Majima both have kind of their own sub-mini-game that each one has on their own, with Kiryu having to do with real estate and businesses, hiring people to work for the businesses, getting the money, going to shops and trying to get promotion for the businesses and all that, whereas Majima had my favorite thing probably ever in a Yakuza game, and that was actually managing a hostess club. You have to hire women to actually work there, and then actually manage the actual club itself, putting people in the seats, dealing with the drinks, making sure that people are taken care of, and even get to customize and dress up the hostesses that are working at the club, which surprisingly had a lot of customization to it for something that's pretty much just a mini game. Then the other activities like the Sega Arcade, where you can go in and play classic Sega games, full-blown classic Sega Arcade games like Space Harrier and Outrun. You also have the UFO catchers, basically claw machines if you're unfamiliar with it, where you'll get to collect not only like the mascots and other stuff from the game itself, but also Sega throwbacks, including Oopa Oopa from Fantasy Zone, and even like a Mega Drive little plushie that actually has like arms and legs. It's adorable and one of the coolest little Easter eggs I loved in the game. There's bowling, darts, pool, disco, which you can basically do kind of a rhythm-based game. Then there's karaoke, which makes its return, of course. And it's kind of like a fantasy karaoke, because the songs, as you're performing them, it kind of goes into a fantasy scene as you're going through, which is actually pretty funny and really cool that that's thrown in. You have mahjong, you have poker, you have CeeLo, which is the dice game where the 3 dice into the cup. And some of these games can actually be done multiplayer. In fact, from the main menu, you can play a lot of these, like darts, bowling, and pool, 2-player, with your same system, or even jump online to play other people in games like CeeLo, mahjong, and poker. There's always some concern with these games since there has been censorship in the past, but from everything I was able to tell and from what I've read, nothing was actually held back or censored in this version of Yakuza 0. So everything that was in the Japanese version is included here in the North American one, including the whole kind of adult film store where you can kind of go in when you kind of befriend certain people in the game and end up watching like these videos of them being all provocative and stuff. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I'm thankful that they included everything from the original release. From the technical side of things, after about 30 hours of gameplay that I've been able to put into Yakuza 0 so far, I haven't run into any major glitching, only a little bit of slowdown, which was mostly in the cutscene, never actually in the action from everything that I ended up experiencing, though there was a couple little graphical hiccups here and there, like with every game, with things clipping a little bit. But there was also no crashing, and I played for extensive amounts of time, so if it was going to crash, I'm pretty sure I would have run into that issue. Yakuza 0 is available on the PlayStation 4 for $59.99. It of course has a full trophy list and platinum, and like previous Yakuza games, you're going to put a lot of hours into it if you're going to want to achieve that platinum. Also, the game got released physically, which is awesome, because one of the biggest gripes I had with Yakuza 5 was the fact that we actually didn't get a physical copy in stores, so that's another big plus to this release. I love my time with Yakuza 0, there's no doubt about it. There's so much side content, and the main story is just as good as any of the other main stories. I love the recurring antagonist of Daisuke Kuze. I know I'm saying that completely wrong. I apologize, I butcher Japanese every time I end up opening my mouth, but he was really cool. I love the throwback stuff to the 80s, not only with the attire, but just kind of the look and hairstyles of a lot of the characters throughout the course of the game, which just amplified the entire like mood and atmosphere of what was being presented. I'm not sure if this is my favorite game by any means as far as the Yakuza series is concerned, but I think for fans, you are gonna absolutely love it. With everything said, I'm gonna be giving Yakuza 0 a 9 out of 10. One of my favorite games I have played in the last few months, and I am glad that Sega decided to actually bring it here to North America, and I'm really looking forward to the other Yakuza games that have already been announced to make it over to North American shores. But anyway guys, that's going to wrap up this review. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course I hope you enjoyed.